Our guest today is Randy Funk, who's the owner of Randy Funk Home Inspections. Randy, what are some questions that we should ask when? And the main thing is, we don't see home inspectors very often. So, what are some good questions to ask?
Well, you want to just see how long they've been doing it. If they carry insurance and how long it takes them to do the inspection. If it's going to be a 30-minute inspection, you might want to stay away from that individual. But, a good 2 to 3 hour inspection is common. And then just maybe hint on some background questions, what they've done in the past. If they, just lost their job at Walmart and now they're an inspector, versus someone that's been in plumbing or was an electrician. Mm-hmm. We carry FHA HUD certification through 203Ks. It's a unique loan. There's only 3 of us in all of Idaho that have that. So things like that would stand out to hire that individual because there's rigorous tests and things you have to do to get that certification versus just printing out business cards and being a home inspector. So there's some things to start with.
Can we ask for referrals and references?
Yeah, you can, but it's kind of the nature. They're not going to give you those negative referrals, so
Yeah.
You have to take that with a grain of salt. But the internet's as powerful as it's ever been. So if you search their name, even mine on the internet now, you'll see Merchant Circle and BBB, all these things come up. And generally, you'll see a lot of stuff on the internet if somebody's posted any complaints about that individual or that company. So you can go that route too.
And I think you kind of hit on it, but anything to look out for or avoid when you're saying, hey, here's an inspector?
There's a few out there that are part-time, so they work, 8 to 4, and then they'll do it on the weekends. So they're probably not seeing as much stuff on a regular basis, so they're not probably as familiar as the full-time inspectors. So, there's just some basic questions you can start with. But, to avoid the wrong ones, you probably just search the internet and see if you come up with anything negative. But, you're going off basic, probably realtor referral. So they have a lot at stake, too, to recommend the right inspector, and they've probably worked with them in the past.
All right. You talked a little bit about water in the crawl space. Some other common things that you find, and I say common, that requires, obviously you're coming in. I'm guessing there's no perfect home. Kind of start from the smallest and work your way to the biggest of things you see.
Sure. Probably the small stuff is, just what we call cosmetic, the dings in the walls and things that they might want to have fixed, or some of the windows that might not be perfectly aligned, and it takes a little maneuvering to get them to lock and stuff like that. That's just minor repair work. The bigger stuff is, actually some insulation issues. I found several new builders that they do everything right. They pay for the insulation to be installed in the attic, and you go up there and there's not a drop of it up there, and they just, the contractor that they hired didn't do it, and it's really not the builder's fault. They paid for it, but I find that on occasion. Again, the water penetration in the crawl space is probably the biggest for some reason, especially around Eagle with the water tables over there. You get a lot of stuff down there. But again, it can all be remediated. They just have to take the necessary steps to get it done.
Now, do you inspect everything, or is there some things you don't inspect?
Everything throughout the house. Anything that's hidden, like, we don't pull the stove out when it's connected or anything like that. So there's no comments on what's behind there, but we run all the appliances. If it's a septic system, we recommend getting a plumber out to, check the tank, or a, septic pumping company to provide records if they've pumped it and check the fields and all that stuff. And as far as the well, I have water testing available, which is, handy when you go out to some of the country properties with the wells. But I don't check the well system itself, so that's another well contractor. But that's about the only 2 things that aren't a part of a basic home inspection.
All right, and you'll also do what you call a partial inspection. What exactly is that?
Correct. Yeah, so that's just for someone that doesn't want to invest in the full inspection, and they may have a contracting background or feel comfortable that they can find and repair things on their own, or the investor that comes through town and picks up a few properties every month or two, and they just want the big stuff. Like I said, I can tailor an inspection if you want just the furnace checked. I offer crawl space inspections for elderly people that just can't get under the house too. So there's all kinds of options within the company.
So, Chris, I want to ask you, how important is the inspection of a home for a potential buyer buying a home? I guess the potential buyer, absolutely. But for the seller, even thinking about it, I mean, do you say, look, this is I call you up and say, Chris, I'm going to list my home with you. Is this, where do you categorize it on a scale of 1 to 10?
It kind of is up in the air, and it's something that we've been discussing more and more. And I think it's a good idea. I mean, a lot of people are opposed to it, but it just kind of depends. Especially when we walk in the house, I have a pretty good feel. I've sold enough houses now where I walk in, I can't see behind the walls. I can't see if there's water intrusion, all this other stuff. But for the most part, I see people that see the one of two things. One, people have neglected the house, and you need to get somebody in there and take a look at it. Or you have we have very meticulous people when it comes to their keeping their landscaping away from the exterior of the home to everything, to having their furnace serviced twice a year, to having everything, I have people that are just over the top with, taking care of their house. So it just kind of depends. I think it's a good idea, but for the buy side, and Randy can attest to this, I mean, you'd be absolutely crazy to buy a house and not have it inspected. I very, very rarely, except for I've seen a couple investment deals, cash offers, really quick, bank-owned properties that the guy just someone wants to tie up with no contingencies, they'll buy those. But for the most part, I mean, like we talk about volume and transactions. Like Randy better be prepared. We talk about how many transactions we've done, how far we're off from where we were volume-wise in Ada County and Canyon County of houses sold. So we're at a third of where we were when we were full throttle. We're heading back in that direction. So Randy's got to be prepared, and so do I. We have to be prepared that we're going to get 2 to 3 times that business is coming down the pipe. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I do. I agree. We've brought on a couple guys already, so it's definitely picked up for me, and I can see most of the realtors are just swamped every day, working long hours. So the market's definitely shifting. So
Randy, we have listeners from Homedale to Wilder to Mountain Home, obviously throughout the city, Meridian, Eagle, Napa, all those areas. So if someone's listening, whether it's downtown Boise or Caldwell or out in Fruitland, do you cover all those areas?
Yep, we cover all southwest Idaho, so we label that. So I'll go to Twin, I'll go to McCall, Sun Valley, all the little towns in between. And usually I'll just make a long weekend out of it and take my family and stay up there. So
say, hey kids, guess what we're going to do? Inspect a house.
Right.
How about going across and I bring this up because folks in Ontario hear us too. Is it the different rules for Oregon, or can you go across and inspect homes in Ontario as well?
No, Oregon has a little different regulations, but we have coverage there, so we can go to Ontario versus most of the inspectors in Idaho cannot service Oregon because they require licensing over there. So yeah, we can go over there.
You're
I've done several.
On that.
Yep. Along
well,
the
I think
border.
that's important because we have some Ontario listeners, and 208-914-5793, 208-914-5793 if you want to look at Randy's website. It's homeinspectorboise.com. And I guess I'm going to kind of throw this out, both of you. So you find something, there's obviously a faulty ceiling or there's an element wrong. Do you guys work as a team, you two, and let's say Burton Freeze, where you'd bring in and suggest, hey, let's the three of us work together, make this happen?
Yeah, there's no question about it, and that's kind of what we talk about talent. We talk about getting good vendors, and we talk about surrounding yourself with good people. And like a scenario would be, you have a problem with the caulking in the kitchen, and Randy points it out, and the homeowner comes to me and says, Chris, what do we do here? You hooked us up with Randy. The buyers want this caulking fixed. We bring qualified guys like Burton in, and there's plumbing issue. Burton, we bring guys, qualified plumbers in. So it's not, and the biggest thing, I think it's like I said, it's kind of a fear factor thing. But the fact of the matter is, you as a standpoint from a seller, you want to make sure that these things are repaired properly and that the buyer is satisfied down the road. You don't want any extra problems. I mean, Randy probably has a million stories about things that we talk about roofs. We didn't even touch on roofing, and that's another big one. Discuss that a little bit, just the roof inspection.
Yeah. Well, to hit on all that, I guess I stay a part of the transaction long after it's even closed. The realtor's moved on to his next transaction. I'll get calls from clients down the road and say, can you supply a carpet cleaner or someone to do our landscaping, and I have all those resources. So long after we've done the inspection and everything's closed, I'll get calls from clients all the time about stuff. So I'm very helpful in that way. But as far as the roof goes, yeah, that's a big one because you'll see a lot of stuff in the attic which people don't frequent all that much in their house. So you go up there and you'll sometimes find leaks around the vents or the flashing that's not installed properly, or shingles that are missing, and you've got water issues up there too. Probably more so in the crawl space. I mean, I hit on that a lot, but that's probably the biggest for the water penetration. But you will find some attics that have had water coming through, and generally there'll be signs of it in the ceiling area below. So most times it's caught, but sometimes the water kind of collects up there and it doesn't show itself right away. So it's definitely advised to get that done. And I have probably 2 or 3 roof jobs every month that get referred out for a roof replacement. It's just the nature of a house that's 40 or 50 years old and it needs it done. So
he is Randy Funk, owner of Randy Funk Home Inspections, our guest today on the Radio Real Estate Show with Chris Lofthus of the Chris Lofthus Group at Keller Williams Realty Boise. Randy, tell folks one more time how they can reach out and get a hold of you.
The best way is direct. It's my cell, 914-5793. They can go to my site again. It's homeinspectorboise.com, or just email me at randy@homeinspectorboise.com.
Yeah, I hate to use the comparison to the dentist. I love my dentist, but we don't always like to go to the dentist. Same thing with the home inspector, but my guess is, Chris, it can save you a lot of money, and the big one is a lot of time.
Yeah, and I actually like to say it's kind of like going to, you talk about your house. It's like your house going to the doctor and getting checked out and saying, you know what, hey, we're putting a stamp of approval on it, and here's the 1 or 2 things you might want to do, whether it's go to the gym or whatever it is. But that's kind of what Randy does.
All right, we'll take a time out. The Chris Lofthus Show. Remember, you can check out Chris's site, Chris Lofthus, ChrisLofthus.com, and Annette has put all the programs on there. So if you were saying, hey, there was a guy that he took a pond and he made it into a pool, or there was another guy that made a doghouse by the shower, what was all that? All of the programs are on there, including our one today with Randy Funk. If you missed that, Randy Funk Home Inspections. We'll continue on with the Real Estate Show featuring Chris Lofthus of the Chris Lofthus Group right after this.